And finally, can I invite Lou Carroll over, a producer with CogApp, and we'll be talking about science in the making, inspiring the next generation.
Thank you. Hi, so this talk is about Science in the Making, which is a website, and about how we focused our efforts on that project to make the maximum impact. I'm Lou, I'm a producer at CogApp. We're a digital agency. We specialise in online collections, and we've been building them for a long time, and we're pretty good at it. So our clients tend to be museums and archives, organisations who have collections. And as a producer, I do project management and account management for these clients, and I'm also responsible for the UX on their projects. And I love UX. I hang around with other UXers in my spare time. UXers in my world is UX designers, UX researchers, content designers and strategists, and service designers. So like Rich said earlier, we are all kind of allies working together for a common cause. I also co-organise Ladies at UX in Brighton. If anyone wants to talk about UX or Ladies at UX or online collections, please feel free to hunt me down throughout the day. So all the questions that we're asking ourselves today about our audiences and their needs, what our priorities should be, how we connect with our audiences, and how we assess how well we're doing at that are all very much UX questions. So I'm super excited to get to talk about this today. UX means a lot of things, but if we're asking a question like, has anyone thought about the UX? What we really mean is, what are people going to think and feel when they use this digital product that we're building? And here's a couple of reasons why that matters. I nabbed these stats from the Baymard Institute. I changed the word users to people, but I should change it back because it's not really accurate. They are users in this context. 39% of people will stop engaging with a website if the loading time is too long. 88% of people are less likely to come back to a website after a bad user experience. So if the digital products we're making are not enjoyable to use, if they're not satisfying, and if they're frustrating for people, our audiences won't engage with us. So people and feelings are important. But as UXers or as digital practitioners or cultural sector practitioners, we're not doing our jobs well if we aren't also thinking about our business goals. So all of the things that we are making have a purpose wider than just make a nice thing that's fun for people or enjoyable for people to use. So whether we want to inform or educate or aid discovery or sell tickets, when we think about UX or when we think about audience-focused work in relation to what we do, we need to align our decisions with our business goals. And the overlap or the combination of these two things is the UX sweet spot. That's the impact that we want to make. So I'm talking about all this today in the context of Science in the Making, which is a major digitisation project from the Royal Society. The Royal Society was founded in 1660 and exists to promote excellence in science for the benefit of humanity. The purpose of this project was to build an online collection that could house the entirety of the Royal Society's archival materials. So that's thousands upon thousands of items amassed by the Royal Society over the past 370 odd years. It's things like documents and letters relating to scientific discoveries and scientific developments. So they're items that are of huge significance when it comes to the history of science. And by the way, when we started working on this project in around 2022, building the website, there'd already been years of work across various streams. So digitising journals, scanning hundreds of thousands of images, cataloguing tens of thousands of items, and running a pilot of an online collection. So we really needed to do justice to a lot of work that had gone before, but no pressure there. So I've talked about the broad purpose of Science in the Making. The specific objectives of the project, paraphrasing very much here, but one was to integrate with other digitally published stuff. So mainly that's the Royal Society's journals, which had already been digitised. Quite often items in the archive will have a direct link to papers in the journals. For example, the archives will most likely hold the original handwritten manuscript of a paper that originally went on to be published. So it's really important that Science in the Making has these golden threads out to other relevant places. Secondly, we need to make life easy for content managers. That's having a CMS that's nice and easy to use and processes that minimise fuss, which for us is a given. It's always going to be an outcome of any digital project we deliver. We need to aid discovery of new relationships. That's relationships between items and other items and between items and people. It's helping people find the links and see the stories that exist here. And then the last two, we need to facilitate academic discussion around the history of science and help academics find new content to strengthen science and research. So it's really clear that there's a focus here on what this project can do for the academic realm. And we need to bear that in mind when it comes to our digital strategy for science in the making. So that's our objective. So who are our audience and why should they care? Well, what we have here is a two-audience problem, which, by the way, is a pretty nice problem to have. The fewer audiences you're trying to cater for, the more that you can focus on their needs. So for us, our first audience is academics. We have a range of academics, probably from secondary school and upwards, and professional researchers too, across all areas of science, many areas of history, and some other disciplines. Historians of science are the main sort of primary audience for the website because they use the archives the most. So they live this stuff, they know it really well. But the other areas actually are just as important when it comes to the objectives of the project around facilitating academic discussion and advancing science and research. So the archives literally hold the resources that these people need to do their work. That's why they care. And if we can build a world-class digital platform to house those archives, it will be game-changing for these people. So what else do we know about what they want and need? Well, we actually know quite a lot. There's kind of a community vibe when it comes to historians of science. Everyone sort of knows each other and they share information and want to help others access things more easily. And also remember, there's already been a pilot of an online collection. So lots of academics have already had a chance to use it and feed back on this stuff. So we know loads about academics, and we have a direct line to professional community, so we can easily find out more about what they want, which is great. And then we have our second audience, which is the general public. And I know that some of you here will have tried to reach the general public. And where do you start? Georgina said it earlier, how do you start? So there is this broader aim of the project, which isn't explicit in the project objectives, of making the archives more accessible to a wider audience. So these are people who don't even know the archives exist. So that's our first challenge, is how do we get people here? How are they coming here? And secondly, how do we make sense of these archives to people who have no prior knowledge of them? And we could spend a lot of time trying to figure out the best ways to tackle this. But should we? I think it's really tempting to rise to that challenge, and probably all of us like the idea of our work having a wider impact. So can we engage the general public in science? Can we bring these archives to life and make them tell stories to people? And maybe we can, but how much time should we spend on this? So we're all working with limited resources, right? And we have to make these choices. We've got a fixed budget project, we've got a fixed timeline, and we know that our objectives are focused on academia. So it is appropriate for us to focus up to 75% of our efforts and our budget on catering for our core academic audience and 25% on the general public. Don't ignore the general public. You don't want people to come to this public website and find it completely impenetrable. But our first pass can be doing something for them in a lightweight, lo-fi way that we can build on later. Once we've got things right for our core audience, the ones who we know are there, the ones who we know this matters for, and where we can really make an impact. So now that we know our focus, how do we make our audience care? Well, we give them what they need, we give them what they want, and we give them what they didn't even know was possible. So in our discovery period of this project, we did interviews with stakeholders from the Royal Society, we did a stakeholder survey, and we also did interviews with academics outside the Society. So we got a really good understanding of how that audience wanted to use this type of platform. So here's a little look into some of the things that we built. So the top thing that our research audience need is to be able to find items in the archive. So giving them the ability to search and do basic filtering gives them what they need. And we had the insight to know that we were giving them filters that would give them what they wanted. And a feature like this date filter histogram gives them what they didn't even know was possible. So this is just filtering the results by date, but you've got a really nice visual representation of the distribution of search results over time, showing the number of results in each year in a way that's really easy to see. And we use this in other places around the site as well. And just going back to the search page, you can see that there's some curated examples here of how you could use the searching and filtering. So this caters for, firstly, academics, less experienced academics who don't know the archives, but also potentially that general public audience as well, of like, how would you even begin to use this thing? What type of things are here? The second thing that our research audience need is to be able to inspect archive items once they've found them. So our people can examine archive items using deep zoom imagery with our custom IIIF viewer. IIIF stands for International Image Interoperability Format, which is a bit of a mouthful, and there's lots to know about it, but essentially it's a useful, practical, efficient way of serving high-quality images at a range of sizes. And it's software agnostic, so these images can be opened using any other IIIF viewer, and plenty of people in the research and academic community will have preferred tools, so that's good for them. Going back to our custom viewer, we also made it easy to browse archives with many pages. So some of the archive items have hundreds of pages. We've got this film strip across the bottom, which makes it easier to browse and can also be toggled to grid view. And then we also have advanced manipulation tools. Unsurprisingly, 17th century handwritten documents are not that easy to read. So you've got handwriting, also varying conditions and hues in the paper. And it wasn't uncommon for people to write one letter over the top of another, which can make it pretty tricky to work out what's what. So not only can you zoom in our viewer, you can also adjust the brightness, the contrast, and the saturation to make things easier to look at. You can rotate images so that you can read notes in the marginalia or just stuff that's been written up the other way when something's already been written, going across horizontally. And you can even invert the colours, so that makes it much easier to pick out individual characters. And this is another nice example of something that our researchers didn't even know was possible and that we know from feedback that people really love. And of course, we delivered on all of the essentials that I mentioned earlier. So there are links where relevant to publications. We surface links between items and people in clever ways based on the data. And also we do all of the bare essentials that are just a given in academic resources like citations and PDF downloads. And then just to quickly show one of the things that we did with our 25% effort for the general public is that we built this In Focus section where the Royal Society can publish articles based on themes or topics. So this means that they can highlight items in the archives that they think might be of more interest to the general public. So bringing these things to life and making them more accessible. So how do we know how well we're doing? Well, we're really lucky in that respect because the Royal Society have got a main line into the core audience. They are part of that community of historians of science. People are still visiting the archives all the time, and also researchers will literally just call or email them if there's something that they can't find on the website. So they are telling us what is missing, which is very useful. One of the things that was in high demand was the ability to see correspondence back and forth between senders and recipients. So this year we built this correspondence explorer where you can choose the first person in a chain of correspondence, then choose the second person. You get this nice overview of the exchange between them. And when you scroll down, you can see each piece of correspondence next to each other. Click in, of course, to see the items in more detail. You can't quite see, but you've got the date histogram there as well for filtering. And this interactive map visualization, which shows where each of the letters was sent from. So we've had really good feedback on this. And again, it was something that we knew people wanted because the demand came from researchers. And this was released as part of a launch of one of the Royal Society's collections. So we took that opportunity to run a workshop with a range of academics to get more insight into how the website was doing. We gave people the fairly broad tasks, open-ended tasks of just browse the website, use the Correspondence Explorer, and ask them questions like, who do you think it's for? What would they be looking for? What works well? What's missing? What doesn't work so well? And actually what we got was some specific pieces of feedback on things that would make life easier for our workshop attendees. But overwhelmingly, what they gave us was ideas to make the website more accessible for academics with no prior knowledge and for wider audiences such as the GLAM sector and the general public. That's really good because what it shows is that we've got our core audience really well covered already. And we got some really good feedback, which is always very nice as well. So how can we do even better? There's a couple of things that come up quite a lot from academics, which is that people want more links between items in the archives based on topics, and also that they'd like to be able to search the archives in a more detailed way based on keywords. And actually, to do either of those things, what you would need is for everything in the archives to be fully transcribed. So on this website, there are item-level descriptions for everything, which, as I understand it, is quite rare in the archive arena. But full transcriptions are really tricky for a number of reasons. So that's possible in the future, but it's a very, very, very long-term goal. Other than those things, we're actually in a really good place where we're just able to make tweaks around the edges now, so to give the website a broader appeal. So we're looking now at the in focus area, how we can make it more discoverable and more inviting to a broader audience. We know from our analytics that we do get spikes in traffic every time the archives are mentioned in the press. So actually the general public are coming to the website, they are finding it. And what we want to make sure is that we give people an interesting journey to go on when they do get here. Just to round off with a little conclusion, if you have a two-audience problem a bit like ours, then focus your attention, your decision-making based on your business goals, and that's how you'll be able to make the most impact. Thank you.